So I went to the Donbass for about 6 days. Well, a little bit less because just so you guys know, because of the sanctions, because of the conflict, you used to be able to take a plane and then go to the Donbass essentially in a matter of hours, 2, 3, 4 hours tops, depending. Now it takes a train. It takes a train and then driving into the border or finding a bus into the border. It takes, a lot. There's a lot of security. It's a lot of work to go. It takes like over a day of travel now because of everything that's going on. And it's unfortunate because it shouldn't be that way, but that's what we're doing. So it's very hectic to actually go there. But I did manage to go in between the time I work at RT and the time I have off. I managed to go. I'm one of the few people who wants to go. I mean, a lot of people just, don't want to go. They're afraid. It is a war zone at this moment. My hotel was shelled previously, not when I was there, it was shelled previously. In fact, most places in the entire city of Donetsk, which is where I went, because you have to understand the Donbass region is divided into several little districts. You have Mariupol, you have the Donetsk city, you have other parts of the Donbass, and so you have these areas that are divided. And then, of course, you have Lugansk as well. And so they were the Donbass People's Republic, and now, of course, they joined the Russian Federation because they had the referendums and they voted in favor to join, right? So when I was on my way there, I was told it wasn't safe to take an American phone. We know this through the past where the Ukrainian um, service, the army, but the SBU has been able to triangulate the uh, the coordinates via pinging of these phones from towers and stuff. So it just wasn't safe. It's not safe, even if journalists do it. It's not really safe to post from a phone on Twitter or anywhere else because they can find out where you are, and then not only are you putting yourself in danger, you're putting others in danger as well. So there's that. So I didn't take my American phone. I went with my Russian phone. And then, by the way, Russian phones don't really work in Donbass as well because it was a whole other company. So I wasn't aware of that. So I found that out very quickly. So I really had like no access to anything. But I was able to really immerse myself in what was happening in the moment. And I think that's important. And the information I'll be releasing is really just ties everything together. So it was extremely life changing. It was extremely, um, putting faces and putting people to the conflict that we see as a conflict from the West, especially if you're in the United States. Oh my God, Russia, Ukraine. You hear these numbers. Oh, the expansion of Russia. They went here, they went there. They're expanding west. Donetsk, and you hear these places and the names, and even reporting about this stuff on RT when I do go to work every day. It's one thing, but when you're actually there and you see what actually is, and you start hearing these bombs go off, and throughout the week, guys, I'm going to be bringing more footage. I literally did not have time. I arrived last night, went to work today, and now I'm here. So I really haven't had time to go through the footage, but I did a massive, massive photos and videos of everything I have. And the internet service, of course, wasn't good on the trains either on the way back, but I did post what I could. So there's that. And I just wanted to show you guys, this is the monument of the children of the Donbass. This is a child protecting, a young girl. And this was in Donetsk. And you can see this in one of the main squares of the park. And I posted this photo because I want to highlight the fact that children were the main victims of this entire thing for the last 9 years. The Ukraine, and more evidence has come out, and I will talk about that in a second, that Ukraine has been using civilians as human shields, the same way we've seen that they've accused Palestinians of doing this, but this is actually a time when this has actually happened, where they've used civilians as human shields. So that monument was made for them, and because a lot of the schools have been shelled, because a lot of these kids that grew up in the basements or were stuck in these basements haven't been able to have a normal childhood. we can talk about the physical wounds, but we haven't been able to even begin to assess the psychological trauma that happens in areas. And a lot of people, who have gone to Donbass, like Eva Bartlett and Vanessa Beeley, talk about Syria because it's similar. People living in these conditions. Now, I want to stress one thing, and I will have more footage of this, just so you guys know. People don't talk about this, fam. Before I get into this particular thread, there is no water in Donbass like normal. Like you can't just open your faucet and get water because Ukraine shelled the water pipes that are coming from Kiev into Donbass. So there is no water. So even for a journalist that stays in a hotel, you have water twice a day, maybe for an hour in the morning and an hour at night. No, the water is mostly not warm, it's actually cold. So if you miss that time for whatever reason, you don't have water, you have to go collect water, which there are stations where people go and collect water, or you will go to a market and buy it. Now, people have been going to markets that are open, and they also get shelled at markets. So just to put this into perspective, so you go to a market, you get your jugs of water. They sell them like here in Moscow. They're about this big. They're like squares. And so I had to, brush my teeth with by pouring water into a cup and wash my face by doing that. Take a shower by doing that. If you have to flush the toilet, you have to do that. You don't realize how we take for granted just something as simple and basic as having water until you actually have to literally have it. And the only other time where I've had to use buckets of water to flush toilets was in the little town Pasta that we went to in Bilwi in Nicaragua, in certain sectors of Nicaragua that, of course, were hurt by the hurricane or that didn't have the infrastructure and that have been rebuilding. Of course, Nicaragua is sanctioned by the United States. So I just want to put that into perspective. Now, Russia is attempting to build ways to supply water, obviously, now that they are part of the Russian Federation, to the Donetsk and Donbass in general. But as of now, you just don't have that access to water. So I just want to reiterate that because it seems so simple, but nobody talks about it, probably because it's like the least of their worries uh, in terms of its water. But it is a basic human need for survival.
Should we play this video real quick?
Well, yeah. So really quick, let me just start at the beginning, right? If you scroll at the top, to the top. So this is an apartment building, right? And on Monday, January 16th, a week ago, Ukraine fired U.S. supplied HIMARS rockets, which are a type of MLRS. So these are the rockets that are huge and they leave giant dents in the ground. So this was a apartment building, a pharmacy, and this was on Ilyich Avenue in the center of Donetsk City. And you guys can see the damage. We went there on Wednesday, and it happened Monday morning at around 8:30 in the morning. And so that's what we saw. Surreal to be there. It's one thing to see it here, it's another thing to be walking around it, seeing just a bunch of papers and people's belongings. And then you'll see people walking who live there who are trying to figure out if they can salvage anything. Imagine that your house gets bombed, you have important documents you need, your identification, whatever valuables you may have, you're going to see if you have anything there. Well, that's what happened. And on the other side, and we'll see that in the video, is just shops. And let's just go ahead and play this, and you can see what we were told and stuff. U.S. supplied HIMARS.
Yeah, and, three people die here, and one girl just staying here for yesterday and waiting for her mother, but also. It was HIMARS.
And when did it happen? And what specifically was this before?
Uh, it happened at Monday. It was some flats and shops on first level. It was shops, and other level, as you see, it's some usual flats for citizens. It happened on Monday. Hammers strike here, and you can see nothing left.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that's just one instance. I have more footage of a hospital that was bombed. Um, just so you know what's coming up. A hospital that was, and they knew it was from Ukraine because of the, again, just so people know who say, well, how do you know that it was Ukraine and not Russia? Um, HIMARS are not used by Russia. Right? Those weapons are U.S. supplied. There's just no denying that. Now, like I said, reporting on this stuff is one thing. Looking at it from a studio from a different way is one thing. Being there and seeing that this actually is real, that this is actually happening, that this just happened, and then also going into the shops and nearby shops and seeing people go, shopping, and then thinking to yourself, at any moment there could be a shelling that happens, and that's people tell you this all the time. People that I went with have been there before multiple times, and they said, like I was caught. I got lucky one day. I left my hotel. I came back. It was shelled. Or my friend who lives there, he left his house for the first time, and it turns out his house got shelled. Just these stories that you keep hearing, and people don't exaggerate when they say this is a war zone, that in spite of the fact that most of the fighting has moved west and further south doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. Like I said, that incident happened Monday, a week ago now, 2 days before I arrived there. So just the day I actually started departing into Donbass, it happened. So this stuff happens. This isn't just something that people are reporting. It's kind of like when something happens to you and you say, oh, like so and so died from a drug overdose, and then it's one thing when you hear about somebody and then it's like somebody or something close to you. It's like that. It just really shifts the entire perspective on this whole thing. Fam, did you want to say anything before I continue?
No, please continue to go. I'm just listening to everything you got to say, fam. Please, because
So
this is
while
the
this has
media manipulation part. So yeah.
Yeah, so while this was happening, right? This happened on Monday. The weekend before that, there was this huge thing that happened, and I had reported on it on RT before I left. And so there was the Western media was fixated on this media spin that Russia had struck an apartment building in the Dnieper. Okay. And I don't know if I think most people remember this, right? If you go online and you Google Russia apartment building, you will get all of this, right? 40 dead in Russian missile attack on apartment building. Poland urges Berlin to give tanks to Ukraine because
Yeah.
Poland keeps pushing Germany to give these specific tanks to Ukraine, and they're still pushing and pushing and pushing. Germany is hesitant. They still haven't said they will, but this is what they're doing. CNN, January 16th, 2023, Russia-Ukraine news. What we know, a Russian missile strike on an apartment building in the Dnipro center of Ukraine left at least 40 people dead, one of the deadliest single attacks of the war. So you keep going, and so when most of the people I know, including some of my friends who don't follow politics, they they see this on the news. They're like, "Whoa, Russia, hit this apartment building in Ukraine." Like I don't understand. And so this is what they see, because this is what's literally pushed out in media. The same exact story all over the place, and you see it everywhere. The same type of titles. The death toll from 40 from Russian missile strike on Ukraine apartment building. I mean, this is Voice of America, of course, but you get the picture, right? So it turns out that according to Ukraine's own people, the people responsible for those 40 dead people in the Dnieper region was actually Ukraine, because Ukraine attempted to shoot at this missile. Now, I reported on this, I think a day before I left, if that. And because Russia says we don't target civilian areas, and that Ukraine did this because it was caused by their air defense shooting down a Russian missile over the city. But this missile was headed towards Ukraine's weapons, completely far away from residential areas, because again, according to international law, you're not supposed to hit civilian areas. That's not according to the laws of war, right? But a Ukrainian official actually agreed. Alexei Arestovich agreed. And Alexei Arestovich was subsequently canceled by the entirety of these pro-Western neocons that literally were upset that he actually told the truth for once, and his entire Instagram was actually taken off of online in Ukraine. So just so you know what's happened so far, completely canceled. He said, "Oh, they took my words out of context. What I meant was blah blah blah." But what I said was that he kind of went back and forth, but he said what he said. And he also has said before, by the way, that Ukraine doesn't have a chance to win this war. He also said that as well. But let's go ahead and take a look so you guys know what I'm talking about here. This is a Ukrainian official that said this, okay?
A tragic incident also occurred in the city of Dnipropetrovsk, where a residential building was partially destroyed by a rocket. According to local officials, at least 20 people died, with dozens more injured. Ukrainian officials were quick to blame Russia of intentionally striking civilian buildings. But Moscow has repeatedly stated it only targets military objects and infrastructure used by the Ukrainian army. It comes as one of Zelensky's advisors contradicted the official narrative, saying that Ukrainian air defense caused the incident.
The missile was shot down, but it fell on the building. It exploded when it fell down.
The Russian military has previously said that Ukrainian air defenses have been ineffective, citing examples of missile defense rockets hitting civilian buildings in the country, as well as neighboring states, when a Ukrainian rocket killed 2 farmers in Poland in November of last year.
Right, so this is what always happens all the time. So Ukraine, in an effort to say Russia did this, they know that it's not going to work. They know it's ineffective to hit these Russian missiles aimed at their armory, their weapons. But they also know that in doing so, that Russian missile that's aimed at their armory will go to the, instead of their armory, it will go to these areas where civilians are, and they're willing to sacrifice the people of these areas, their own people, to blame Russia. That is what I don't know if anybody said it as cut and dry as that, but that's essentially what's going on. So Ukraine is effectively sacrificing civilians in order to formulate a way to blame Russia for this stuff, because the whole point of this conflict, it's supposed to be you target people's weapons, you target these areas. But time and time again, proof has come out, and most recently via Sky News, which just happened today, I just reported on it earlier today, there is proof that Ukraine has been putting their weapons near residential and civilian areas. This is coming now from mainstream media. Some officials of Ukraine have admitted this. So again, this isn't the first time. And so Arestovich, of course, said that it was shut down, but it fell on the apartment block. It exploded when falling. And again, so he was not allowed to say that. He said the quiet part out loud. So as I said, he was canceled and completely just blasted online by people saying he should be, imprisoned, saying he should be, excommunicated. I mean, people just went all out against this, right? And so the reason I talked about this was because while people were focused on that in mainstream media, hardly anyone was reporting on a actual target via HIMARS, U.S. supplied weapons, in the people of the Donbass, in apartment buildings. There was literally, I was there. It's the middle of the city. where there's a main avenue and there's apartment buildings, there's shops, there's this and that. There is no weapons there. There's nothing there. There's no justifying why would you mainly accidentally think that there's weapons. It would be like attacking the middle of your downtown area of whatever town you live in. That's what it would be like. So there's no justification of that. There's no way to say, oh well, maybe they thought. No, like this actually happened, and all of that was ignored because everybody was focused on, oh my god, Russia did this. And that is how you get manipulated. And that is why I don't see this conflict as an equal conflict. I see it as Israel versus Palestine, not to the extent of, this being an open air prison, by the way, but to the extent of where people try to equate this in the same vein. And it's just not in the same vein, because there is one side that is literally okay with killing civilians and justifying it. And there's one side that isn't. And I think that, it's really ignorant to really try to use that whole, well, I'm for peace. So I think, again, I urge anyone who has a child, even a pet, a family member, if you're just going to stand by and let somebody come and kill those around you. These people have more resilience than I've seen, just so many. I see it in all the countries that are affected by NATO, by the United States, by intervention, by sanctions, by blockades. I see it in the people of these countries. I've been to enough countries to see that resilience. That doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean that these people aren't forever traumatized, forever hurt, forever. We have never in the United States lived an ounce of that. We haven't. And that is why people in the United States aren't out in the streets. Because you don't know what it's like to live like that. I don't even know a couple of days without water, we were all like, oh my God, this is so difficult. It's like I wanted to slap myself, but these people have lived it like this for 9 years. Yeah. For 9 fucking years.
And you have right here, fam, in this last tweet, I have much more to report, and we'll follow up with another thread on more civilian targets and interviews. I just want to remind everybody, the audience, that Fee just literally got back into town, had maybe a couple eyes of shut eye, and then had to get to the studio, do some work, and it's here again. A lot of people have been saying they can notice the hard work you've been doing and seeing it, and it's quite amazing, fam. And I can't wait to hear more and see more with what you got. I put up the Scott Ritter video on Sunday, so it'll be nice and fresh towards today about will it be justified. We clipped it out, and it's out separately. It's an 13-minute clip, if you guys want to go on to that. And Scott kind of goes into the justifications of why Russia invaded or military action. And I believe I stand firmly on that. The quickest way to peace is through a Russian victory, because the United States, all they wanted was endless war. They wanted war. That's their goal, and it's to bleed Russia. So another people who didn't want war, for all the anti-imperialists out there, or the anti-war people out there, are the people of the Donbass, where Fee just went to, and get to see them. So if you ever get a chance to go in there and see them, you might change your tune differently. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, fam.
And just a couple more things I want to say that people may not know. Donetsk has this black soil, okay, in the southern part of now the Russian Federation. There's this, it's a lot warmer than Moscow. It's about like 20 degrees warmer. I mean, it's just so much nicer. The sun was out. It wasn't like warm by like our standards, but it was definitely warm by 40 degrees and up.
Fam, I have to just grab something for 2 minutes. So if you can go on for about 2 minutes, I'll be right back.
Yeah, so it's a lot warmer in the south, right? You're much closer to Crimea, you're much closer to the Black Sea, you're closer to better weather. So there's this black soil that is located in this region. It's extremely fruitful. It's where so much grows, okay, in the southern part of the entirety of Russia, but also in parts of what was Ukraine. And that part is what gives food to the rest of the country. It'd be like the Midwest or the parts of California in the United States. So that is really good natural resources that who wants to get a hold of. Then there's also minerals, coal, There is just a plethora of natural resources. And before this conflict, before 2014, they used to have an amazing train system. Donetsk and used to have an amazing train system. They used to have more restaurants, more just urbanization, growth, and building than actually Kiev itself. Kiev wasn't even as well situated as these parts. And the thing is, most of the buildings that when you drive through Donetsk, you see were made during the Soviet Union. They were not made during when this was a part of Ukraine, because remember, Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. And then afterwards, of course, there was independence. And then that, since Ukraine took hold, they didn't really do anything for the people of the region. Like, there wasn't much that was done, but there was a lot that had been there through the natural resources. And so that area, of course, had a lot of people who felt they were ethnically Russian, as we've talked about at length on this show. And these people who felt they were ethnically Russian were really, really had this culture. They were Orthodox. They had this, this proximity to Russia, but many of them have relatives on the other end of the spectrum. This is one of the things that I found that I've talked about before from people in Moscow having relatives in Ukraine, but this happens in the Donbass as well. A lot of people didn't want to talk to journalists because they have family on the other side. This isn't, you kind of feel like a dumbass coming in there and asking questions just so we can tell the story to you guys, just so we can really expose the truth. Because what these people go through, for example, like I said, what I have coming up is released prisoners from war, prisoners of war, that talk to us, and you will see in their faces, you will see in the face of these people the trauma they've endured.
On
Their
the
eyes are
Telegram
gone.
channel?
No. I'm saying what I have coming up.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna see these. You're gonna see these. The way that the toll of that. Then there was, of course, Soledar. As you guys know, Soledar was liberated and is now completely taken over by Russia. It's a Russian-controlled area, right? And so now the people from Soledar came a few talk to us, and you will see that footage as well. So this is from Intel Republic, and I just want to reiterate this news that came out, right? So Sky News couldn't hide, right, the hidden Ukraine tanks. And if you just scroll down, there we go. Tanks and other armored vehicles concealed among buildings in Artyomovsk in the Donetsk region, ex-Ukraine residential area. So these, of course, are what I was talking about here. They will hide these weapons in residential areas. They will use people as human shields. More and more information is coming, this time from Sky News as well. So I just want to reiterate that for the public so you know what I'm talking about here. But if you haven't seen that, watch RT. We've literally been covering it all day, as well as just more revelations of things that are coming out. That, of course, RT is censored everywhere. And as I put, I think I have a link there, RT France had to shut down because their bank accounts were frozen. So this is again what we're up against. People act like, oh yeah, she's a Russian propagandist. Guys, like at any minute, anything with RT could be shut down in terms of, because look what they did to RT America. Look what's been done. Look at how it's censored. Look at the labels that I get, the labels that many of us get. And so it's not like this is like this isn't the place you go to work because you want some sort of, like, it's not like CNN or BBC. Like, if you want you to be a high paid stooge, you go work there. This is
Babe,
not,
you're not doing it for the
it's not
finances.
easy.
Is that what you're telling us, fam? You're not doing you're not wait, you're not taking me on a vacation this year with the extra money?
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah. It's
Right.
so
Well,
stupid.
Cuba will be,
Yeah.
but and it's like, and I did this on I did this with on my free time, not with RT. I did this on my own, but this, I think it's so important that more people do this. Whether you're a journalist, you don't have to be a journalist. You can be a citizen journalist. You can be whoever. Um, Go to these countries. Go to somewhere where you're discussing the information. Go to those places because it's so important to really open up your eyes to seeing what is on the ground. And we've always advocated that from the moment we were in LA. We would go to these meetings. We would go into the Democratic Party. We would go into the events that were happening all around our community. And now, of course, it's expanded to international work that we do. So, and the reason we do international work, it's because our foreign policy is our domestic policy. And this is our foreign policy at play here.
It's clear this grueling fight is morphing into urban combat. Inside the city, Ukrainian forces are making fortifications. Lines of Soviet-era tanks and armored vehicles are concealed amongst the buildings.
Did they
Right,
just
so there's just more
did they
of
just
that.
incriminate themselves there?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean,
they
they just
can't.
incriminated themselves. Oh no, no, we're not putting military near people. You just said lines of Soviet-era tanks that are owned by the Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's like, hello.
Yeah.
Well, let me bring up the RT France stuff too, fam, because I think that's important as well. So there's freezing bank accounts, and listen. When we get into the next topic too as well, we're going to talk about censorship in America and how it's even baked into the conservative side, right? In America, because a lot of people think that, they were just going to Rumble and Getter to get away from Twitter, to get away from YouTube and have our own voices. But no, it's baked in. What do you see as the pros and cons? I don't want to say pros, but what are the cons of shutting out Russian media more than anything? Because a lot of people would justify and say, yeah, well, they shouldn't be able to spread their propaganda. It's good that we censor them. It's good that in France they've shut down RT France. What is your pushback to that?
I mean, it's obvious, right? Like, what propaganda? Why is it counter-narrative propaganda? And what about the propaganda from the West that doesn't get labeled, doesn't get in any way questioned? And when you question it, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're, a right-winger, you're a Putinist, you're a Hitlerist, whatever, you're a Zionist. No, not a Zionist, anti-Semite. You get labeled all these things, but they never get questioned. They get, oh, we fact-checked you, so you're wrong. Like, it's ridiculous to me. If you want to call Russia Today propagandists, then call everybody else a propagandist. And then I go back to, do you expect Russia to constantly, badmouth themselves all the time? Like, and the thing that irritates me the most is being here and seeing how careful Russia is to make sure that they're not just like, that they still, a lot of people that work here still look at the BBC, they still look at the Washington Post, they still think that there can be diplomacy reached with the West. And like I said, in some ways I'm more anti-West than some of these Russians are, because that's just because I know how the West is and what they've done. And the Americans that are here are the same way as I am, because we know we come from the belly of the beast. And Russians overall, they don't hate Americans. Neither do they hate Ukrainians. Neither do, I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, these people, they don't hate Americans. They understand what the U.S. government is doing, but the vast majority, I haven't heard them say, Americans this or that. Like, it's actually quite the contrary. They're much more accepting and diplomatic than I would be if I were them. And that's something that I find really enraging when I hear people say, well, RT this and that. I mean, they do a lot more fact checking than the idiots who almost got us into World War III by saying this missile came from Russia and was trying to hit Poland. Those are the people that the AP, the Washington Post, the New York Times, or how about the Guardian and the Washington Post, the New York Times, who really pretty much republished what Julian Assange published, and they were let out completely scar-free, while Julian Assange is still in Belmarsh prison facing 175 years for the truth. And that's what I want to say to those people. It's a double standard. They're hypocrites. They're sellouts, and I think history will not be kind to them. It's, as more and more of this conflict gets unraveled, they're on the wrong side of history. If you think that Russia was not justified in what they're doing, in a way, I do think you're on the wrong side of history. But if you are spouting that narrative of Ukraine is this and that, and Hitler, Putin is Hitler, and all this stuff, and these people, these Russians are so evil, you're on the wrong side of history, because these people are just like any other people in any other country. They have the same goals, the same aspirations. They just want to be sovereign. They want to be able to determine their own future. That's really the issue. The question of sovereignty was talked about in Donbass quite a lot. They just want to be a sovereign people. They're very proud of who they are. The people that didn't leave because this is their home, and they're ready, and they have this passion and resilience to fight for their home. And I'm not the only one that went there. There are other people from other countries that didn't know each other. It's not like we got together and said, hey, we're going to go and we're going to all have the same exact story. No, I just actually interviewed a gentleman from Italy, actually, fam, an Italian, a real Italian. Today, he came into the studio. He went to Lugansk, which is again in the same region. But he went to Lugansk, and he was telling, he basically said the same thing. He said, this is just everything we are told about this conflict is a lie. And I didn't know him. I didn't even know there was an Italian going to Lugansk. And Arno is, I'm going to talk to him tomorrow on RT. He's French. He went, these are the things that we are revealing. And two of our people who went with us went to the UN and testified in the UN. And I'm going to try to cut up some of the stuff so we see, because what was testified in the UN on, was it Sunday or Friday? I think Friday. I think it was Friday. Is troubling. Okay, there was a mother who lost her daughter, and her testimony. Not that I think the UN's going to do anything about it. I think it's just good to hear it. Her testimony was heartbreaking. It was just awful. Her daughter was around the same age as me, and it was just awful just to hear what happened to her, just for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And the way she talked about what happened to her daughter, the way others have relayed how many times I've gone to the Donbass, what I've seen, the just everything. We're not making this up. These are groups of completely different people, and the people of the Donbass are just eager to show you what they went through, what they've gone through, their experience, and why they're doing what they're doing. It's the same way we've gone to Nicaragua, that we've heard the Sandinistas talk about U.S. intervention. It's the same type of thing. And then you understand why there was a Russian delegation in Nicaragua discussing sovereignty recently. And Lavrov brought that up today in his meeting with the South African foreign minister. And they were talking about Russia's relationship with Africa, and they were talking about why Africa wants to expand that relationship. It's just, these are the things. This is a common thread here on all the countries that have been completely just touched by Western interventionism.